Hello, and welcome to the MenTell Health Podcast. I'm Tim, and I invite you on my journey to talk about mental health. Before we begin, as always, a brief disclaimer. I am in no shape or form a mental health professional. I'm just a man who's had a lot of experience with dealing with his own mental health and the stigma of it, and really, I want that to stop. No more stigma. Let's go. Yes, today. Well, maybe you know this. Maybe you've experienced this too. I'm almost sure that you have this feeling of being either in a group of people and feeling like very lonely, or having no one to go to when you're feeling lonely. Just being lonely. I'm sure at some point or another we've all experienced it, but for me for a while, and for many men out there and women, especially after Corona. The pandemic has really shown how easy people get completely isolated because they have either no support group, or just the way their life has been structured by the systems around them means that they have very limited access to other people. And it's detrimental for our mental health. It really propels and brings out a lot of mental health disorders, because being lonely as a social species, which is what we humans are, it just makes us ill, mentally and physically ill, because, as I've mentioned in previous episodes, being mentally ill and not getting any help can have a very bad impact on your physical health, and vice versa. There's evidence that being surrounded by close people, by a social group that people feel connected to, that is associated with a longer and healthier lifespan. Being around people that you feel comfortable with lowers your blood pressure and triggers chemicals in your brain that have positive impact on your brain health. People that have strong social networks are less stressed, feel more not just feel, but are more resilient, more optimistic about life. They have more healthy weights. They also have a significantly lower cognitive decline in older age. So all of these combined should already be evidence that we need to work on this loneliness that we're experiencing. So yes, this is what I would like to talk about in this episode, loneliness. Because research and studies have shown that there is more men out there that actually experience loneliness, but it's more women that seek help for it, or that actually, without impulse, report it, but more women admit to it. Men don't. And there's many reasons of why, and I will get to that in a minute. But loneliness basically feels sometimes like a bit of a loose term, but it's the inability or the impossibility to connect with someone else on a deeper level. Because yes, we can all hang out with people every single day, have a bunch of people around us, and yet because maybe we don't have anything in common, or we feel like we can't share something that worries us or that excites us, be our true and authentic selves with them, there is a disconnect, and that disconnect then is the feeling of loneliness. And it is an epidemic. There is more and more and more people that report a feeling of loneliness, and with more people that report it, there is a much higher dark number out there, a much higher number of people that don't actually report it. So if you have 100 out of 1,000 people that report they're lonely, minimum double, if not more. And it's actually amongst with men, it's roughly 1 in 5 that in their life have no one they feel closely connected to. And interestingly, in surveys, if one looks at the loneliness rating, there's this U shape in how people report how lonely they feel, and it's in the early stages of life, teenager, and then in the middle life it's lowest, so people are actually the least lonely, and then once it's people reach older ages, 60, 70, 80 and higher, the loneliness increases again. But interestingly enough, even though that is the curve, where in middle age, 40s, 50s, 30s, 40s, 50s, people report to feel the least lonely, when it comes to men, that is the highest rate for successful suicides. Now, some people argue that that is due to the fact that actually, even though they report they are the least lonely then, they actually aren't. That they are then the loneliest. Now, why is that? In order to see how this bottom curve is, even though reporting the least loneliness, but is also associated with the high suicide rates amongst men, it helps to look at the development of men's loneliness, men's ability to have social networks, social interactions with other people. Researchers have looked into how behavior of boys, young adolescents changes, because boys aren't born in any way less inclined or less craving social connection than girls are. That's not true. When the researchers looked at boys aged up to 10, 11 or 12, there was this longing, there was this curiosity, there was this drive towards social interactions, towards having close relationships, sharing secrets, being intimate with each other, being vulnerable with each other. So up to that age, there's no difference between boys and girls, how they have close relationships and how they interact with each other. But then, starting around 13, 14, 15, 16, a big change happens. And the researchers concluded that that is most likely due to the societal impulses that are given to these young boys, that they now need to be men. They need to behave like men, and men aren't vulnerable. Men are tough, and it doesn't matter. Yeah, everyone's my friend. It's all cool. Everything's cool and chill. There's no drama with boys. There's no stress. All needs to be easygoing, and in order for everything to be easygoing, you can't really share much. You can't really be vulnerable with each other. Because, and this is also something that research has shown, but we all know this, the truest and most authentic connections we have with people that we feel we can be vulnerable with, that we feel, hey, I can tell this person everything and they won't judge me, they won't rat me out to someone else, they won't make fun of me behind my back, they actually understand and they care, they give a shit. That's the people that, okay, I know you're there for me. And that's most likely not the case for men. That's just not what happens. Because not only starting with the puberty and adolescence and starting to grow up, that part goes away where they told don't do anything, don't be vulnerable, don't share anything with anyone. Friendships, mates, they go out, they drink, they have fun, they do activities, but they don't share their feelings. Something else happens once they start with the early 20s and the vocational training, studying, whichever starts to happen, the the day structure is now mostly working and then very little or limited time. People move away, people have families and start having long-term relationships, and especially in heterosexual relationships, the men then tend to heavily focus on that family life. They have this safe harbor now. Okay, now I have this person here. That person keeps me safe. I can share quite a bit with that person, some more, some less. But now this is like my little cosmos. And we more and more in our society are encouraged by the way the laws are made, by the way the renting is made, the communities are built up, housing estate areas, how they're built up, how media reports it, are more and more put into this small little box that is our family, the nuclear family unit. That's the one that we're supposed to be in. There's supposed to be two adults, preferably man and woman, but with one eye closed we also accept man, woman, but don't get too close to the other ones, and a few kids, and maybe if you behave you get to have some grandparents close by, but actually for your job you had to move somewhere very far away, so that didn't happen. And then that's your social circle. And for most men, that's it. Especially in a very, the last generation, and also a tiny bit the most recent generation, where it's still a lot of the emotional labor and the upbringing of the kids and all the organization stuff is put onto the woman, if it's a heterosexual relationship. And they get to then, at least in quotation marks, have interaction with other parents, mostly other mothers, to have a social circle with that. And they also kind of manage to bring some parents back from their growing up, because they form very close relationships and they don't break as easily as the loose ones that most men had. So in that stage where they've now built families and live in these family units, the women tend to have a social circle that is based on either friends from growing up or new people from building a family unit, having kids and having some social ground, some common ground in that area. But men have superficial relationships at work, and then the social circles that they share with their partner. So usually what happens is in a heterosexual relationship, just pointing this out again, the partner brings home their friends. Those friends then bring partners with them, and then those partners become associates, and then they hang out. Which, at least is something, but the social circle always relies on what the woman has created. And oh no, when that breaks, when the relationship ends, the man has basically almost no one left, because all those friends they made in that relationship were proxy friends via the partner. And especially if that relationship doesn't end amicably, whichever word is correct, there is no one for them to turn to. And then they're lonely. And then the moment comes where all of a sudden, for the last, how many years, let's say until their 40s, for the last 15, 20 years, they've not had to make any friends. And no one around them has to make any friends because they still live in that bubble. And that's when the loneliness really, really, really takes a hold of them. And there's no one to turn to. And that is why, one of the reasons, it's not the only reason, don't get me wrong, but that is why in that age category of 40 to 50, there's such a high number of male suicides. Because they suffer from, either they suffer already from a mental health issue, which can lead them to any abusive behavior, be it drug or aggression, or because of the loneliness they then experience, they start to develop mental health issues, which then leads them to commit suicide. Because loneliness does not help when you have suicidal thoughts. I guess most of us have experienced this and seen this, because a lot of this is the trope in any sitcom, any Western sitcom, where the husband is a bit rubbish, doesn't really have any friends, is mostly gruntle, loner anyways. The wife has lots of friends, and that's not because the creators took out one minor person they once observed and thought, oh, that's hilarious. But no, that's because it's a trope that works, because most people can relate to that. It is around us. The epidemic is so big that it works as a universal understanding. Of course, we all know that person. We probably grew up with that person, or we are that person. And once that stage after school, if you're out of school and you don't have an established friendship group, or out of university maybe even, then it is really, really hard to make friends. It is just insane how difficult it is, especially in countries that already have difficulty with being interactive with each other. I live in Germany, and it is ridiculously hard to make friends in Germany, because we kind of are in this group of people that we have established now. This is our group, and then it's very difficult for other people to get in there, or for us to get into other groups in a not superficial way. Having acquaintances, easy, but having real friends, close relationships that you can count on, that's almost impossible after a certain age. And I've experienced it. I have close friends. I've lost a lot of friends due to my mental illness when I was younger, and also due to just how the situations evolved, moving away, going to study somewhere else, and being a bit rubbish at it. But I get to that in a minute as well. And I now live in a city that I went to for university, and everyone that I studied with has moved away. Every single person. I am the only person left that I studied with and had any contact to. And also the people that I am very close friends with that used to live close to me also now all moved away. Every single one. The closest person lives in the next city, which by bike is half an hour. I train a bit more. So yeah, I'm alone here in the city, and I am really rubbish at making friends. I am in a very fortunate position that I do have close friends, and yeah, I've made some acquaintances in the city by myself. But the closest people that I am in contact with so far, and it's something that I'm not happy about, because it is exactly what I've talked in this episode just now, and this situation I would like to change, but I don't know how. Is that the people I'm closest to are the people that my partner has managed to make close friends with. Yay. And a few months ago, my partner's very close friends from childhood came over, and the bonds and the relationship they had is something that I really, really crave as well. And I do have that to an extent to my friends, but it's not as close as that. And I think it's because, as men, we're not encouraged to have that close relationships. And I am mostly friends with other men who are not encouraged to have these close relationships. And all of them are now in a heterosexual relationship. So they have their spouse as the closest person to be with. So yeah, it's difficult. It is very difficult. I'm not the only one. It's not just me that experiences this. I've read a lot of testimonials about men moving to a different city and being completely without anyone, going weeks without talking to anyone outside their work. And if they work from home, they don't talk to anyone. And they even try to go to places, they try to go and interact with people, but in some cities and in some areas, if you aren't already in, you just don't get in. There's no way for you to make any meaningful connections. And that's especially true for men of certain social, financial backgrounds, because for the way that social relationships are formed between, and again, I'm talking very binary here, but that's because that's still how most of the research has been conducted, and the majority of our social structures are still constructed around the binary gender norms of male versus female. So yeah, how the social connections are formed for women, it's a lot about who you are, very close into let's talk about what makes us us and what we share, what we don't share, and how we can interact with each other. And for men, it's a lot about what you are. So it's more competitive again. So if you are a man of a low, in quotation marks, social status, whatever that actually means, but it means for most people, unfortunately, it means low economic status. Then you don't have a way in that regard. You can't participate in what most men do to make connections, which is going out, doing activities, going on trips together, going on outings together, going partying, going into having like big hobbies where you need to spend lots of money, either go racing or skiing or going on boat trips, canoe rides, car trips, holidays, whichever. Lots of stuff that you need to spend money for to make it happen. Whereas for women, meeting for a coffee that doesn't even need to cost anything, just go for a walk and just talking about what's going on in your life, that's what forms bond. But for men, it's doing something together that forms bond. And if you can't afford it, then I'm sorry, but you lose out again. Great. And that's a big problem. And this is getting more and more and more, or worse and worse and worse and worse, because yes, we work more from home, we can't afford to go to any clubs or to go to pubs regularly or to take part in any events that cost money. We have a smartphone with social media apps close by, or a computer where we can read about other people, so we can see how other people live their life, which can make us feel more lonely. I don't want to make social media out again as the villain, because it can connect people, but for the most part, the way it is used, it doesn't. For the most part, it is used to promote oneself, and that in the end makes other people feel bad. And that's why I advocate for a social media that is more honest, where people show actually, hey, I'm just sitting at home being alone. It sucks, but that's who I am. And yeah, why don't you hang out with me? And as I've mentioned before, it's not only that's changed, but also that we are more mobile. There's a lot more moving about, whereas in past generations, people never really moved out of their city or their towns. People were always close by. We now move away for work, we move away for our families, for opportunities, or just to experience new cultures that we otherwise wouldn't be able to experience. And that's not bad. That's not something, not all of it is bad. But we crave community, we crave connections, so we need to make an effort to get these connections, to make these connections, to sustain these connections. And that is something that men are just bad at. And I too, I am terrible at it. I forget, or I either forget or don't have the time, or am too anxious to reply to people. And then or to ask people, let's do stuff, because I get overwhelmed with, I have so much to do, and then I also need to maintain this friendship, which obviously I would benefit from to an extent. No, I would benefit from it. I'm just saying to an extent to justify myself not doing it, which I should stop doing, because I can sustain friendships and have healthy boundaries as well, and say, no, I don't need to do that. Well, I try. Sometimes it doesn't work because I'm trying to be better. Anyways, yeah, I'm rubbish at it. I lost so many people in my life because I just stopped reaching out to them, and I made it their job. And yes, it sucks when people don't reach out to you when you stop reaching out, but I should have at least tried, and that's what I didn't do. If I tried and failed, then that's okay. Then I know they didn't want me in their life anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But now I don't know, so it's a bit sad. But it's not just me. That's what happens to. I know quite a few men who are the same, who just don't really do emotional labor because, for one, we aren't taught to do it. We aren't encouraged to do it. There's very little role models that show us that it's good to do that. There are more now. It's getting better, which is great, and I love it. But it's still lots of men that rely to an extent on their partners, or just don't have anyone. There's so many. It's crazy. There's so many people that are alone and have nobody to talk to, that go through their life and don't talk to anyone. And that's just, as I've said at the beginning of the episode, that's just not healthy. This lack of closeness that men crave the entire life, even if I'm just going to assume here, lots don't admit it to themselves, or admit it to themselves but don't feel they can admit it to someone else. And the only way we can change that is by, one, creating communities that don't need to spend money to do stuff together. And in order to change that, we can't just force men to talk to each other, as much as, I'd love to do that. But that's just not all what men are. Men aren't just talkers. Men, despite the social conditioning, there's also, to an extent, the idea of I want to be helpful. I want to do something productive, and that can be a type of bonding in a way. And then from that can go something else. So we need to create systems or opportunities for men and women to come together without having to spend money, or in a way that works with their schedule. Because one of the biggest factors why we have so little, or many of us have so little social engagement, and especially for me, is just the lack of time. If you have a full-time job and a family, when are you supposed to make friends? Especially if roughly it takes 90 hours, spending 90 hours with someone to become friends, and 200 to become close friends. 200 hours. That would mean 5 weeks, 5 work weeks, continuously speaking, spending with that person. Some people don't see their spouse that much. And I mean, I'm a big fan of the 4-day week. It's been proven to be just so much better for all of us. And we can afford it. It's just rubbish. And I know there's arguments that say, oh, but not every job can do that. Well, then we need to work on a way that it can also work for those jobs, instead of just saying, well, it doesn't work for these few jobs, so let's just not do it. How can that be the answer? Anyways, so we need to make more time. We need to allow people to have more time to do that. And we need to create opportunities, volunteering, more local events, bring our communities together, have more small street festivals, have more community gardens, have more walks, tours through the city that you didn't experience before, more stuff that is community-based and funded by this government, by the city, or just doesn't cost anything. Because that's how men can make friends. That's how men get together. When I was living abroad for a year, the people I got closest to, I got to meet by chance, because I went on a tour through the university that I attended. So I just started randomly talking to them because we just happened to stand next to each other. That's how simple it was. And we had a great time for that year. Again, we didn't manage to continue that contact because all of us were rubbish. But that way I made some friends, which was great. It was a great year because of that. Otherwise that may not have happened. So that's really, really essential to, on the one hand, create the opportunities. The second hand, don't dismiss that men aren't going to just start being completely open and vulnerable in a minute with each other, that there's a process that needs to happen, and also that men are just different at making friends, and that's perfectly fine. And also let's make more time in our lives by just telling our bosses that we don't want to work 40 hours anymore. And yeah, if you're a boss out there, I'm sorry, but do you want to have less time for friends? And I think something that we need to also really, really change, and that's something that I'm trying to work on and I'm not great at, and it takes me a lot of effort, but it is super, super important, is that we need to give it priority. We need to give it a priority. It can't just be, oh yeah, friends are nice. No, friends are important. They're as important as your family. They're as important as your career. I would say even more. But if your career is very important to you, then that's, yeah, cool, go for it. But prioritize your friends as well. Can't be career, family, friends. And they're not even on camera anymore. It should be family, career, friends. One. Because that's the only way we get to change it. So, yeah, if you want to be my friend, reach out to me. I'm happy to hear from you. But also, if you don't want to be a friend, but just talk to me. I would be super happy to hear from you. You can email me at men-tell-health.com. There's an anonymous contact form on the website, men-tell-health.com, tell, T-E-L-L. You can find me on Instagram, MenTell Health _podcast. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you can comment down below. I would love to hear from you. And this is it for this week. I'll be happy, or not just happy, I'll be grateful if you could give this podcast a positive rating on one of the podcasting app, whichever you're listening to on it to, it allows it. If you can give it a review, that would be great. Follow, subscribe, whichever. I would be super, super appreciative, and it would really help get these messages out across to other people and to other men who may benefit from it. So that would be cool. So yeah, this is it for this week. Thank you so much for listening and or watching. And remember, I hear and I see you, and I hope you hear and or see me again.